Okay, so we're going to work on basic fill, run, and satin stitches, and we're going to create this Christmas tree here. Just because it uses basic shapes and lines, and I can show you how to create the satin star as well as the zigzag trim here. So we're going to start off with a new document, and mine is set to 100 by 100 millimeter. Then you want to select your polygon tool here. Make sure polygon and 3 sides is selected. Okay, so now that we have our polygon tool selected, we're gonna just kind of find the middle of the canvas here, and we're gonna draw our triangle straight up, and that will kind of keep it flush with the grid that we have displayed. And then we're going to shift left click on the green color that we like here if we want to change the outline. And we're just going to resize this and make it wider and shorter and kind of try to recenter it till we get it the basic shape. Then left click to fill it, CTRL-D to duplicate it. And then we're going to drag up that duplicated copy and make it a little more narrow and shorter. And CTRL-D again. And if you shift drag, that will make it transform from the center. So we're going to do that a couple of times until we have our basic Christmas tree shape. Then we're going to select them all and align center, align along the horizontal center. And then we're going to go up to path and union to combine this into one shape. And that's going to be our fill, our basic fill. So we're just going to leave that at the default settings. And then we're going to create our base of our tree. And you can shift drag to resize this and kind of try to center it a little better. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is create our stem. So we're going to select our pen tool here, and we're going to shift left click on our dark brown color here to set our stroke. And if you would like the brother color palette like I have, you can click on this right sidebar menu and select the thread color palette that you would like. I like the brother color palette because I don't like to have too many different color choices. Otherwise, I might select colors that I think are the same color and they're actually different. So if you want this palette though, you can go to Inkstitch, Thread Color Management, and install thread color palettes. And then you can select your brother color palette. Because if you have too many colors that are similar, you might select what you think is the same color and it's actually a different color. So the next thing you want to think of is the direction that you want your line to stitch. I want mine to stitch from top to bottom. So I'm going to left click at the top, and then I'm going to if I can find the center here, left click, and then right click to get your line to show up. Next, we want to come up to our fill and stroke menu, and you can see it's not here right now. So I want to go up to my object menu, and then fill in stroke. And then I want to set the stroke width to about 4 millimeters. So you can also right click in the bottom right left hand corner here and then select 4 millimeters from there. So then you want to take a look at the cap that's on your actual stitch. A better representation of how this will stitch out is just your regular node end cap instead of the rounded end cap. That way it doesn't show that it doesn't extend past the point you want it to. So then you want to go to Inkstitch, satin, and then you want to do stroke to satin stitch, and that creates your ladder shape that you need for your satin stitch. And if you want to test it, you want to select it and hit CTRL-SHFT-P, and that will show you what that looks like and you can see it stitches in a downward direction. You want to apply any parameters that you're going to apply and make sure you hit apply and quit if you change anything. This is already set to a satin stitch. You may want to trim after. If you're going to use this color again, then you would trim after. And we'll do that in a later lesson. But for now, we're going to go ahead and just leave this as is. We're not going to use this color again, so we don't actually have to trim. Your machine will automatically trim when it changes colors. Otherwise, you will have a jump stitch in between your same color stitches that are sequential. So the next thing we're going to do is create some satin ornaments on here. So you want to grab your circle tool from the menu, and you just want to, you can CTRL-drag, I think, creates a perfect circle, and it really just kind of snaps. It doesn't necessarily create, on a Mac at least, it doesn't necessarily create a perfect circle. I'm sure there's probably a way to do that. But once you have drawn a basic circle, this is a little big, but I'm gonna go ahead and make it a little smaller, and I'm gonna CTRL-SHFT-P so that you can see that right now that is just a fill stitch. So in order to create a satin stitch, we have to do a couple of things. We have to first convert this to a path, which you can do by coming up to path and object to path. And then you can see it has your 4 nodes on there. Okay, so now we're going to zoom in a little bit so we can see a little bit. And we're going to select that path and then our node tool, and we're going to select 2 of our nodes, and we're going to come up here and we're going to, first let's turn that into an outline. So you want to shift left click on your red, and then that line is very thick, so we're gonna right click on our menu down here, and I like to select 0.5 or 0.25. So now we have those 2 nodes selected, and we're going to break the shape at those 2 points by coming up and selecting break the node, this little button here. And then I'm going to change the color for a second so that you can see the direction of the lines. And you can see that 1/2 is going up and 1/2 is going down. So just select a node on one side and then press Ctrl-R to change the direction of that line. Let's reverse the line. So now they're both pointing upward. And we're going to select and select our color again, and then we're going to Control-Shift-P, and you can see the running stitch comes up first. Deselect the running stitch and it automatically defaults to the satin stitch next, and that is just a basic satin stitch for ornament. And I do want to come down here to the bottom and select trim, because I'm going to duplicate this and I don't want jump stitches in between all of my ornaments. So apply and quit. Let me zoom out and press 5 to zoom out to my entire canvas. And then I'm gonna just Control-D and duplicate these ornaments how many ever times and place them wherever I want them to be on my Christmas tree here. And once I have those where I like them, the next thing I'm going to do is create my trim, and I'm just going to grab my pen tool and left click wherever I want those points to be. Shift left click to change the color to like a light blue, and then you can see that I'm dragging the center because I want this sort of arch there. If I want to create a zigzag stitch as well, I'm gonna go ahead and Control-Shift-P to look at my parameters. You can see it's just a running stitch right now. So I can just come up to this drop down menu here and select zigzag stitch. And you can adjust the size of it and apply and quit. Make sure to hit apply and quit because you changed your parameters. And it just looks like a blue line, but it is now set to stitch, and we'll test it once we're all done creating everything. So for the star, I like to come in with the square rectangle tool and just hold down Control to drag a perfect square, and then Shift left click on the dark yellow. Take that square and go path to object to path, and then you're gonna click on it twice to rotate it, and then Control rotate to get 15 degree increments. You're gonna Shift resize to drag from the center, and that's gonna give you this diamond shape. And we're gonna kind of center that on our tree there. And I decided to do it on a grid line, so I then had to move my tree to be centered on the line there. Okay, so I'm going to zoom back in. There we have our diamond tool, and I'm going to place that right on the T. So I'm going to Control-Shift-C, that's object to path. Select those two nodes, break the shape at those two nodes, select one side and Control-R to change the direction, and Control-Shift-P. And you can see that it's stitching from the bottom to the top, and that's what I want. And I'm gonna go ahead and I'm not gonna add a trim, I'm gonna let the machine jump because it's gonna jump underneath my satin stitches. So then you want to select your shape, select it twice, and you'll get this center rotate tool, origin, and you're going to want to move that to one point. And then you're going to Control rotate to move it, to get it to snap when it rotates. And then if you hit the space bar, it'll create a duplicate as you rotate it, wherever you hit the space bar. And the last one I'm just going to kind of place there. And then you can kind of select your node tool, and you can kind of, if I had made this more narrow, it would fit a little better, but I'm just gonna move my points over. I'm not going to be too particular about it. And I'm going to kind of match these up, and you can see they kind of snap to the edges if you have your snap tool on. So now I can select that whole shape, and what I want to do next is I'm going to go ahead and test it, and you can see that it's moving outward to the inside. And if I show my jump stitches, you see that line? That's not going to show up on your stitches because it's underneath. It's jumping underneath, and it's not jumping very far. So that's a good way to quickly create a star shape. I'm going to Control G to group my star, and then I'm going to use this flip horizontal to get it facing the right way that I want it to. I want the point up. And then I'm going to Control Shift and then the right arrow key, and that's going to bring up my stitch preview. And there you can see it's all stitching out. The only thing I don't like is the trim is in front of this ornament here. So I'm probably going to delete that stitch plan, select that, all my ornaments I think, and move everything around so that it's in the order that I want it to be. And then I'm going to Control Shift right arrow. Okay, so we're going to save that, and next we're going to work on meander, fill, and branching and create this simple Christmas tree here. The little bit different star, and this is the previous file I created, and we're going to just recreate that. So I have my 100 by 100 millimeter canvas, and I'm just going to grab my rectangle tool and click and drag and draw this long rectangle shape. Left click to change the fill, shift left click to remove the stroke because we want these to be a fill. And I'm just going to kind of resize this to whatever length I think I want my, overall shape to be. And I like to just Control D and make the next one a little shorter than the previous one. Control D and drag and make that one a little shorter. You can kind of try to space them out a little bit about the width that they already are. And I'm going to make that one a little taller, and I'm going to add one more here that's in between those two sizes there. It should kind of snap to align if you have snapping on. Then I'm going to select all of them and just kind of checking my width here to make sure that they're all similar width. Sometimes it can be deceiving when they're kind of not evenly spaced. So I'm going to select all of them, and then I'm going to just make sure that they're aligned on the bottoms. Then I'm going to click again on, while I have multiples selected, you can rotate them all together. And I'm going to kind of angle them outward like this, like I would want my Christmas tree to be. Then I'm going to select the right edge, which is going to kind of stack them like this. And you may want to kind of nudge that downward with your arrow. Select the bottom one, and then I'm going to evenly distribute them because they're kind of stacked on top of each other right now. And that kind of does a good job of evenly distributing them one on top of the other. And I want to duplicate that group, and I'm kind of do a union and duplicate that union. So I'm going to select them all. And for that lighter color, I'm going to CTRL-SHFT-P to look at my fill. And I'm going to select a Meander fill for that. And then I'm going to come in and draw another square for the trunk of the tree. And I know that moved kind of fast there. But we're going to go ahead and scale this upward. And we're going to select our two end nodes, and then we're going to shift and drag those inward. And we're going to create kind of this large, long, sort of pyramid shape. And then let me make that a little more narrow. To separate this, we're going to use our eraser tool. And that's going to help us break these up into segments. And that's why I like to use a fill first, because I like to imagine what it's going to look like once it's stitched out. So just go ahead and grab your eraser tool, drag it across, and it'll break the line there. Drag it across. Then we're going to go ahead and let me drag this other line across. We're going to take our selection tool and we're going to change that to outline, shift left, and then left click on the X to get rid of the fill, because we're going to want these to be satin fill. So when we select our node tool, we can kind of zoom in and we can select these two bottom nodes, and then we want to delete the segment in between. So select that button at the top that deletes the nodes in between. Then for these middle stitches, you can see I have multiple nodes. So I'm just going to select them and press delete so that we just have our two nodes here. Just hitting the backspace key. And then I'm going to select my two nodes and delete the segment in between. Delete the segment in between. So we're creating our own rungs now. And that's going to create a satin stitch. So I'm going to do these last two segments, and you can see I can do them at the same time. Then I'm going to do the top and delete the segment in between the nodes. And then I want to make sure that I'm grabbing one side of the node and changing the direction of it. So grab this section here, grab one side, and let me select a different color so you can see. Can't really see with that dark brown. If I change it to blue, you can see that these lines are going different directions. So that's not going to work as a satin stitch. So I want to select one side, Control R, and then that will correct the direction that I want the lines to go. So now I can select both of them. I want to Control K to combine them. And that's going to stitch out correctly now. So I'm going to select them and kind of lower it down. I'm now going to select these two lines, change the direction of one of those lines, and now select both of them, CTRL-K to combine them, kind of make that a little smaller. And then this last shape, I didn't mean to hit Ctrl-Shift-P. I meant to select one side, Ctrl-R, and those are now the same direction. So I want to select both of them, Ctrl-K to combine them, and then I will have the option to change that to a satin stitch. Then I can resize it, and those are my satin stitches there within my design. So I'm going to make that a little smaller. I'm going to select all of those and Ctrl-Shift-P if you want to test that out. And I'm just going to Ctrl-G actually, group those. And I want to kind of lock those. So now I can work on my branches. And this is where we're going to learn branching. So over here on the right of your menu, you can use the eyeball or the lock to make sure you're not actually accidentally selecting. So you just want your dark brown, and you want to use your pen tool. You're just going to draw various lines. And this is literally drawing branches. It's really the best way to learn the branching tool, but you'll find many more uses for the branching tool other than drawing branches. But this is just the best example of it, and that's why it's called branching. Because you don't want all these lines to stitch separately, and you don't want jump stitches all in between them. So once you've drawn all your lines that you're going to draw, let me go ahead and add a couple more. You can see I'm not necessarily doing them in order of how I want them to stitch or the direction that I want them to stitch. I'm just kind of more thinking about what I want it to look like. You want to make sure that all your lines are touching. Sometimes there's just a very small space in between, and that will cause a trim to happen. So make sure that all your branch lines are touching. I'm going to add some smaller branch lines here. Then I'm going to grab my selection tool. I'm going to kind of move things to make sure everything is touching. Just kind of, carefully look at all your points. Then select them all, and you're gonna again, I'm just making sure all of these are touching. I saw some separation there. So select them all, and then you're gonna come up to extensions, Inkstitch, and you're gonna go to your stroke, and you're gonna go auto route running stitch. And that is basically what a branching option does. And you have some choices here. You can trim your jump stitches. I'm not going to. I'm just going to hit apply, and then I'm going to close that window. And you can see over my layers palette that there's all these auto route stitches now that were automatically added. So now if I select that entire group and CTRL-SHFT-P, you can kind of make these lines more narrow to give more of an indication of what it'll look like. But CTRL-SHFT-P, and you can see that it is stitching out all those lines. And you can even add a bean stitch, and you just want one in there because a bean stitch automatically does 3 stitches. One bean stitch is 3 passes on each stitch because it goes forward, backward, forward. So we're going to apply and quit, and then we're going to take that entire group and we're going to duplicate it, and we're going to flip it horizontally and align it to the other side. And that's going to create our branching. So I'm just going to hit save at that point so I don't lose my work if anything should go wrong from here. And then we're going to work on our star, and we're going to make a much more simple star this time. We're going to select our star tool, and we're going to draw straight up from the center of the Christmas tree. Instead of doing the diamonds and everything, we're just going to use the star tool. I'm going to add a couple of spokes to my star. And I think I'll go with that one. I'm going to select it, and I'm going to, I don't know why it's rotating from that end. There we go. Well, it's kind of jumping. So I just want it to be with the V side down. I'm going to kind of move it up a little bit to where I want it to be. And from here, I'm going to fill it a little differently. I'm going to CTRL-SHFT-P to go to my parameters, and I'm going to select the ripple stitch, which kind of does this contour thing. It's just a running stitch that fills the space in with a contour, and it creates a pretty cool effect. So that's another good way to fill a star shape. So we're going to do our stitch plan preview. We're going to Control-Shift right arrow, and that's going to show us our meander fill and our branching. And next we're going to work on applique. Okay, so we're going to do our applique next, and this is what the file looks like. I'm just going to recreate this really quickly. And we're going to start off with our 100 by 100 millimeter canvas, and we're going to go to our polygon tool like we've done in the past, and select your 3-corner polygon, which is a triangle. Drag that up, and we're going to fill that with green. Shift click, Shift L on the red X to get rid of the stroke. We're going to kind of reposition our triangle here, and we're going to Control D to duplicate that and resize it like we did before. And just going to kind of position that like we want it. Maybe make the whole thing bigger. And then, actually, if I want to make this similar to the one before, I need to drag this down, select my corners, and select this corner rounding tool here. And that'll give you these little triangles to drag in. And actually delete those center points there. I don't like them. I'm just going to drag my segment in to create that rounded part. I'm going to round my corners. I'm going to delete these other triangles. And I'm just going to do object to path for this triangle. And I'm going to duplicate it and make it smaller now. It's going to give me kind of the fun rounded shape that I wanted for my applique. I'm going to select that top corner. I need to round that corner as well. And then I'm going to select the whole thing. I'm going to go to path and let me go to path and union to combine all those into one shape. And then I'm going to select my polygon tool in a square, my rectangle tool rather, and I'm going to create a rounded corner square. And then I'm going to duplicate that and put a 4mm outline in dark green on that. And that's going to be my satin stitch. And you're going to want to have multiple layers. You're going to have one running stitch that is your tack down. You can see in my layers there, one that is my placement stitch, and then the final thick line is my satin stitch. Sorry to skip ahead here. But you don't want that overlap there where the trunk and the tree meet, so I'm going to remove that segment. And then I have my two, let me select this tree because I want to show you, if I convert that to satin right now, and I go to Command-Shift-P to my parameters, you can see that this corner is very sharp and there are long stitches there. And it generally doesn't look good with a satin stitch to have those pointy parts. So I'm going to come to my stroke style and I'm going to change that to a rounded corner. And then when I convert that to stroke, it's going to lock these other I'm going to select these two graphics that I have here and export them as a ping for use as applique templates that I can cut out my fabric to that shape. So you can cut in the hoop, or you can do it this way where you bring it into your Cricut as either a ping. This is what it looks like when you upload it as a ping. It'll let you do the different colors. It'll separate it into layers. And then I like to resize it according to my, this is in millimeters on Inkstitch, and on Cricut it's in centimeters. So you just want to make sure that you're moving that decimal point to make it the correct size if you're going to cut the fabric that way. So I'm going to delete that and I'll show you how to delete that. And I can show you that it's much easier to just upload the SVG and it automatically just brings it in. And I thought it would bring it in at the same size, but I did end up having to resize it again according to my size on Inkstitch. So there's the correct size, and if I wanted to, I could just cut these shapes out. But if you're cutting felt, it's kind of hard, so sometimes I like to create a template, and I will you can do like draw and create an outline and draw that on a piece of paper, or cut it out on a piece of paper and then use that as your stencil sort of, or you can draw directly on the fabric. There's lots of options with a Cricut. Or you can come back and do a print and cut, but you need to flatten it. Why won't it let me flatten? Oh, it's It's because I have the wrong machine selected, so I need to switch to the correct machine, flatten, and now to let me do a print and cut. And you can see it's showing me what that's going to look like on my mat to print and cut that. So just some options when you're creating Applique and Inkstitch. So thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and like if you want more content like this on how to use Inkstitch.